Welcome back everyone. This is Burak Yolga, founder of Forescape Digital Freight Forwarder. Today's video, I will be explaining you the Incoterms and why this is important for your sourcing, purchasing, and international shipments. There are four major Incoterms that we will be discussing today. So what are the Incoterms? Incoterms are the set of rules that defines the responsibilities of buyers and sellers regardless of the origin of the country. So even if you buy the product from China, India, Turkey, Vietnam, the set of rules and Incoterms will be the same. So today I'll be explaining you the four major Incoterms. These are EXW, FOB, DDU, and DDP. Learning Incoterms and using them efficiently is an important part of international logistics and sourcing. Confirming the Incoterms both with your suppliers and freight forwarder is very important for your international shipments and international sourcing. Always make sure that your products are safe according to the correct Incoterms and you're going to pay according to the correct Incoterm. So we will be discussing the four major Incoterms and how it applies in which circumstances. So I will be explaining to the EXW, FOB, DDP, and DDU. As you can see in my presentation, these are the most common and Incoterms in 2020 that has been published. Incoterms changing every 10 years. So the last Incoterms were 2010. Now the ones we are using is from 2020. The next Incoterms will be updating in 2030. So let's start with the most important Incoterms. Let's say when your shipment is ready, your supplier will be asking you to ship the product either with their own freight forwarder or the freight forwarder you find. But let's back up a little bit, because actually when you purchase the product, asking which Incoterm applies for the pricing is very important. The reason is if you ask your supplier the price according to DDP or DDU, there will be a lot of different expenses will be adding up to the product cost. This is going to explain and this is going to affect your actually buying price as an EXW. EXW is one of the safest and most common Incoterm that actually I recommend highly for e-commerce and Amazon sellers when they source their product. The reason is EXW is the pure cost of the product. The rest of the Incoterms that I will be explaining, such as FOB, DDU, and DDP, will have additional costs. So let's start briefly with the EXW. When you make your first purchase plan and you ask your supplier EXW, it means that the buyer is responsible from all the costs, all the way from the factory door to the destination and end delivery location. FOB, free on board. Buyer will not pay any local charges, but supplier will pay. DDU. Freight forwarder will handle the full delivery and all costs, include everything, except duty and tax. DDP, one of the most common actually international shipping process for e-commerce sellers and Amazon sellers, because everything handled by the freight forwarders, everything is included as well as duty and tax. So there are a lot of important actually topics that you should be paying very close attention on the DDP shipments. So the EXW, let's start with the example. What are the sellers and buyers obligations in here? Sellers are actually obligation is only to manufacture the product, providing the documentation, commercial invoice and packing list, time to time country of origin. The place goods at buyer's disposal at the name placed at agreed upon date. It means that let's say that you are placing order of cocktail shaker and your factory will be producing the cocktail shaker and their responsibility is only delivering this product at the factory gate. So it means that your freight forwarder will be handling the entire shipping process and charging you all the costs, such as pickup fees, China local charges, ocean freight or air freight, custom clearance, destination expenses, and the local last mile delivery. So that's why when you actually ask for the freight forwarder EXW code, you need to make sure that they understand which charges they will be actually charging you. Seller's obligation is actually finishing after they finish the production and the product is actually at the factory's gate. What are the buyer's obligations? Pay the price of the goods as stated in the sales contract. Provide seller with the evidence having a taken delivery. Unloading, loading at seller's location. Export license and custom formalities. Loading charges. Main carriage. Discharge on onboard carriages. And import formalities and duties. Cost of the pre-shipment agreement. So basically, when you place an order to your factory EXW, the factory's only responsibility is producing the product according to your requirements, and obviously the custom requirements and the destination requirements. And the rest of the shipping process and the international handling process needs to be taken care of the freight forwarder, and all these charges will be paid by the buyer. I highly recommend you to choose the EXW form of payment method with your supplier. The reason is, if you choose FOB, DDP or DDU, there will be a lot of different additional costs, and you will actually never understand the manufacturing costs. Whenever your supplier is actually coming up to you and explaining you the raw material prices increase and they need to increase the product price, you will never actually understand how much the increase is coming from the freight side, how much is coming from the local charges, and how much increase is coming from the pure manufacturing costs or raw material increases. So that's why choosing the EXW type of payment term with your supplier is highly recommended. FOB. So the FOB is something that I'm sure all of you are recommended by the suppliers, because for them it's just easy to handle the local operation and local charges and add up the cost to the product cost. So when it comes to the FOB, the seller's obligations under the FOB Incoterms are as follows: delivery of the goods and the custom requirement of the documentation, packing and wrapping, inland transportation in the origin of the country, custom handling fees, and origin charges. So this might cause you some savings according to the supplier is actually paying the local charges. However, the supplier is always adding the unit cost of each product to the top of the production cost. So in this case, even if you're thinking that the FOB price could be cheaper than the EXW price, you definitely need to ask your supplier to offer you both EXW and FOB prices. When I lived in China, I had many cases that the factory is offering EXW and FOB charges the same. So when you purchase a product, in my next video, I will be explaining you this part, that you definitely need to be very careful with your supplier that they're actually having a gap between FOB price and EXW prices. What are the buyer's obligations under the FOB terms? Payments of the goods, international freight after the shipment departs from the origin, destination charges, custom handling fees at the destination, inland transporting at the destination location as a last mile delivery, and payment of the duties and tax. Let's start and explain it with the case study. What I mean was there are 4 different types of Incoterms that you will be using and hearing very commonly. These are EXW, FOB, DDU, and DDP. Each of these Incoterms contain different type of destination origin fees. Let's say you're ordering 1,000 pieces of cocktail shaker, and the EXW of this product is $10 US, and FOB is 10.5, and DDU is $14, and DDP is $18. So if you don't ask your supplier the breakdown of these Incoterms and the pricing, you will not understand what is actually the product cost and how much your supplier is actually charging you for the origin charges. In my case, the supplier is actually offering you a difference of the 5 cents, actually 50 cents. It means that in total for 1,000 pieces, you will be paying from your pocket, if it was EXW, $500. But is it really $500 is the total worth of the local charges, or it's more or it's less? In many of cases, according to my experience of over 10 years working in China and with China, there will be always additional fees, let's say 20 to 30 cents, will be added by your supplier. This is because of the supplier is trying to make sure that they're covering all the costs, and if there's extra charges, they can cover this cost from the money that they're actually charging. Whenever your supplier is offering you, let's work with the FOB, and they say we give you FOB price and EXW price the same because we want to have a long-term relationship with you, I really highly recommend you to question this approach and definitely ask them EXW and FOB price must have a gap. So this way you can ask your freight forwarder what is the actually 1,000 piece cocktail shakers local charges if it is less than $500 or more than $500. So this way you can actually understand the pure cost of the product and you can actually start having a lot of savings. Ask your supplier for the local charge versus the freight forwarder, and then make the comparison and choose the cheapest option for your business. According to my case study, difference between DDU and DDP can be up to $4,000. So this is a very big saving that you need to be very careful and asking the freight forwarders the right questions, and definitely choose the EXW term with your supplier and find your independent freight forwarder to ship internationally door to door. So quick tip, choosing the EXW payment term with your supplier can save you a lot of time and money. Always negotiate this Incoterm with your supplier and make sure that they're offering you comparison EXW and FOB. DDU. DDU is a very common Incoterm, which means delivery duty unpaid. This shipping term is very popular and common for large customers who has more than 20 to 25 CBM meter cubic. The reason why the big customers should be using this kind of shipment is because the freight forwarder or your supplier is handling everything internationally except duty and tax. So what are the sellers and buyers obligations are here? The seller's obligations are enclose the invoice and documentation, packing the product, care for export license, export duties and export formalities, transport to the delivery location, pay for everything except the duty and tax. What are the buyer's obligations? Buyer normally choosing the freight forwarder or asking the supplier to do international logistics door to door, but it's not included duty and paid. So this is the reason. Whenever your supplier or freight forwarder is offering you DDU versus DDP, you need to be very careful and getting an explanation for your freight forwarder, which costs are included and which costs are not included. DDP. I think this is one of the most popular international Incoterm right now for e-commerce sellers and Amazon Walmart sellers. The reason is actually the buyer has nothing to do with any of the freight or duty or custom clearance. Everything is included. However, you need to be very careful with your freight forwarder and asking them which HS code, which is the international custom clearance process of the tax and duty. You need to make sure that your freight forwarders is using the correct HS code according to the correct product. So these are the sellers and buyers obligations. Goods, commercial invoice, or documentation is made by the supplier. Exporting, packing, delivering, paying the duty and tax on behalf of the customer. Buyer's obligations are actually here, technically there's nothing to do. However, asking the freight forwarder or suppliers the right question, which shipping line they're using, which HS codes are using, what is the delivery time, and if there's any issue with the custom clearance, and if something happened to the product, who's going to be responsible is the most important things that you should be asking and raising the questions to your freight forwarders and suppliers. My quick tip will be in here is location of your supplier matter in DDP shipping. It may change the price, affect your shipping time. So that's why when you are choosing your supplier origin, either in China or India or Turkey, definitely ask your supplier which is the closest and largest airports and seaports, and making sure if you have an option, choosing the supplier according to the distance between the factory and airport or seaport. Another tip will be here is always ask what shipping line your freight forwarder is using. An important part, it should never be missed. So in my videos, I wanted to explain you in Incoterms how it's going to help you to ask the freight forwarder and the suppliers the right questions. And most important tip in here will be, when I want to summarize this video, is how can you make sure the duties paid are according to the correct HS codes and the custom regulations. So the right answer is choose the right and correct HS code for your international shipment. One of the most important things I will be explaining in this video before I finish it is actual weight versus the volume weight. The volume weight is very important in international air shipments, because if your shipment is the volume is higher than the actual gross weight, then you will be charged by according to the volume weight of the freight company's calculations. So according to my calculations, the volume weight could be different than actually the gross weight. The way of calculation this, the volume weight, is you multiply the length, the width, and the height of the cargo. You divide to the 5,000, and you find the total CBM in meter cubic. So in my video, I wanted to explain you all the details. I hope that this video is going to help you. If you have any further questions, you can always reach out to us at sales@forsket.com. Thank you and see you in the next video.